think about how we thought about Baker Mayfield this time last year. Nobody wanted him. Everyone thought he was just like kind of like a little bust. It's basically the same thing for Trevor Lawrence. Now, if Trevor Lawrence, if they are able to, if Liam Cohen is a right answer, as they say, if Trevor Lawrence is able to make this work and you think he's in the same sort of tier or bucket that we thought about Baker last year, Baker finished as like what, the QB5 last year? Trevor Lawrence, 25, 26 years old at this time next year, if this works, and I believe it will be valued as a top 5 quarterback in Dynasty fantasy football.
What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
Redraft ends, but Dynasty is life. Final Dynasty Life guest show before the start of the 2025 fantasy football season. We're talking about fantasy football hot takes that are going to have a big impact on not only redraft managers, but dynasty managers this year. Joined by one of my favorite guests in the entire industry and one of my best friends in the industry, Alan Seslowsky of Rotowire. We're diving right into it, Alan. No time to mess around here. Season is right around the corner. This is the time for bold predictions. It's time for hot takes. We're getting a little spicy here. You refused to share your takes with me in the pre-show. I shared a nice show sheet with you. I typed them out all nice. Big shout out to everybody at Fantasy Points. We're doing it the right way over here. But Alan, you are a madman. What is your first hot take for the 2025 fantasy?
God, so you could say
No,
those show sheets are for losers, by the way, for complete losers.
Well, we've always had this take, and this is a whole nother take where Alan and I sort of don't like the whole show sheet. We like to get in here and we like to rip. I like a little bit of a map. I'm sort of I don't need it. I don't need it to be like a script, but I need a little bit of a map lately. But I agree with you. We're so comfortable podcasting with one another that we don't need a show sheet. We don't need we don't need it. So today you refuse to share anything with me. You are a blank canvas. What is your first hot take for the 2025 fantasy football season?
Let's define what this is first, right? This isn't like you can't just say Tyler Shough is going to be like the number 1 overall quarterback. That's never going to happen, right?
Things that could happen. It's got to have a little bit of truth to them.
Right. So in my book, this is something that has like a 25%, a 1 in 4 chance to happen, but I truly do believe it. It has a plausible upside to happen because what's the edge? You always talk about edges in fantasy football. That's why I love your shows. I watch every single one of them is because you're trying to, everyone is so like smart. Even like the dumbest fantasy person is smart nowadays. So we need to figure out like not what's likely, but what could happen. So right off the bat here, Bhayshul Tuten, the rookie running back on the Jacksonville Jaguars, will finish as the RB8 starting in week 6 on. Now, where did I get this from, right? I just didn't pull it out of thin air, Theo. Bhayshul Tuten, there's a very clear comparison to what happened in Tampa Bay last year. Coach Liam Cohen comes over from Tampa Bay to Jacksonville. By all reports, they were touting that they wanted their 4th-round running back, Bhayshul Tuten. Very similar to what happened to Bucky Irving last year, right? Now, if you believe that Baker Mayfield, how we thought about him last year, is similar to how we think about Trevor Lawrence this year, there is a chance that Trevor Lawrence could be, quote, fixed by Liam Cohen, opening up the whole offense. Tuten, we all love the upside right there. And if he does seize that job by week 6, this is the same exact finish that Bucky Irving had. Week 6 to week 18, Bucky was the RB8. Bhayshul Tuten will follow that same path.
I love it. And we've had a lot of Bhayshul Tuten enthusiasts on this channel. It's sort of been the Bhayshul Tuten theme sort of waned a little bit. Now it's completely back. We also have the added bonus that there's a chance that, and spoiler alert, we're recording this on the weekend of Labor Day. There could be a trade where a Jacksonville Jaguars running back is on the move before the start of the year. And I think that if there's one that's not moved, it could be early on in the season. Seems like they have a little bit of enthusiasm for LaQuint Allen, but Tuten's the guy. Didn't
you see, though, I gave myself that first 6 weeks for things to sort itself out. I didn't say from week 1. I said from week 6 to week 18. So injuries are going to happen. Trades could happen. This is the same path. Like, a lot of times, like in our redraft leagues, Theo, you just named like no team keeps 4 running backs. They did. It's going to be even a tougher path because by all reports, LaQuint Allen is a good player. So it's going to take a minute to sort itself out. In redraft, I predict that Tuten will be dropped. So I'm not even saying top 10 RB. I'm saying RB8. It's very specific.
No, I love it. I love it. And Tuten can catch the football. He is also an explosive runner. It's the Liam Cohen offense. It's the Jacksonville Jaguars. And you're down in the Jacksonville area. The vibes are pretty good with this team right now, Alan.
Yeah, I don't leave my house. So I could be in Ohio. It would be the same damn thing.
Little guy gets a little time in the pool. Got a nice tan rocking Allen. I'll stay with the rookies, and I'm going to go with the fun one because there's a lot of steam right now. Teteroa McMillan, Emeka Egbuka, Travis Hunter. It's another summer where we're continually talking about the strength at the wide receiver position, but a player that's been sort of beat up by the Dynasty community, certainly beat up by the early redraft community, not by me, but by a lot of other people, and certainly not by Brett Whitefield either. We were sort of the pro Matthew Golden camp people at Fantasy Points. A lot of people sort of knocked him. Not a whole lot of production, a lot of backloaded production this past season at Texas. Of course, he's got the 2 outstanding games on tape, Arizona State, and of course against Georgia in the SEC championship game where Golden was just awesome. But you had this sort of knock on him that he's a speed guy. I think that all bets are off here. And I think Matthew Golden is going to, much like Bhayshul Tuten, it's going to take him a few weeks, but I think he's going to be a top 24 wide receiver in redraft from about the second month of the season on. And I think he will be an easy wide receiver 2 with a lot of juice in Dynasty. There's going to be a huge market correction for Matthew Golden. I'm not sure how highly he's going to run. The wide receiver ranks in Dynasty, it's like there's all these like resistance points, Alan. But I think at the end of the day, Matthew Golden, it's going to be the player that Dynasty managers are going to look at and say, I could have had this guy in the second round of my Dynasty rookie drafts. He is a clear wide receiver 1. I think the season is going to be very, very strong for him. I think we're looking at something along the lines of 900 receiving yards. I think we're looking at about 7 or 8 receiving touchdowns. And I think he is going to be the number 1 preferred target down the stretch for Jordan Love on what should be a very, very good Green Bay team. And a little bonus to my first prediction, I also think Tucker Kraft solidifies himself as a top 10 Dynasty tight end. Those 2 players are going to be the very solid targets for Love. Both of those players are going to beat their redraft ADP considerably. Jacobs is fine, but those 2 guys are going to take a huge step forward, and Green Bay is going to have a very, very strong season.
Let me tell you why I hate this prediction, Theo. Because according to the consensus Dynasty rankings, Matthew Golden is already wide receiver 23, and Tucker Kraft is already tight end 8. So you're saying they're going to lose value?
No, I'm saying they're going to gain a little value. And anybody who's been doing some of these startups, Matthew Golden is not always going off the board at that level. I mean, I think we look at the key. Sometimes if you look at keep, trade, cut, it doesn't necessarily show you. I know this, Alan. I was in a lot of high stakes Dynasty leagues where Matthew Golden locked in second round pick. There were people taking, and I'll say this, there's people taking Jaden Higgins ahead of Matthew Golden from the jump. That was a very popular thing to do. Sort of Matthew Golden has the profile that can't hit. I mean, give me the ultimate upside. Like if everything goes right for Golden, like I want you to bolt part 2.
So he ends up being part 2. He ends up being wide receiver 12 when we look back at the season, like something like that.
And I'm not predicting that, but I think there are some parallels between Matthew Golden and Ladd McConkey. The lack of college production, the elite athleticism, the teammate target competition where Ladd was playing alongside NFL players, so was Matthew Golden. Even if you go to Matthew Golden's early time at Houston, he was playing alongside Tank Dell. Like Matthew Golden's an interesting case, but I think a lot of people were Ladd McConkey. It was sort of a quick correction where Ladd McConkey, there was sort of some doubters, and then he gets drafted by the Chargers, the nuts landing spot, and there was a very massive correction. I don't think there was as big a correction on Matthew Golden, but it really is the nuts landing spot. Jaden Reed is not a full-time player. There's so many people in fantasy football that love Jaden Reed. There's a lot of attributes that Jaden Reed has that we love for fantasy, but it's a trust factor of the coaching staff, a guy that doesn't get on the field in 2 wide receiver sets, and now he has a huge foot injury. Green Bay's told you their confidence level in Golden by their lack of moves. It's going to be Romeo Doubs. It's going to be Matthew Golden. Dontavian Wicks is probably the wide receiver 3 to start the season. So it's Matthew Golden. They need Matthew Golden, and Matthew Golden, I think, is going to be a great, great pick. Why don't let's kick it to you for your next hot take.
Bold prediction, right? Not these cowardly predictions.
Mine was, I literally just evoked the name Ladd McConkey with Matthew
that was
Golden.
good. That was
Let us
good.
know.
I had
Let
to.
us know in the chat. Is this not spicy enough? Bhayshul Tuten one was slightly spicier for sure.
No, these are so. Remember, again, these are not hot takes to be hot takes. These are hot takes that have a 1 in 4 chance to happen. And Matthew Golden being the next Lad McConkey, top 12 wide receiver, I think that does have a 1 in 4 chance to be happen. So you did save yourself. I will give you that. All right,
I had to get bold at the end. You
okay, very good.
Coaxed it out of me.
All right, so Ollie Gordon, he has been very popular pick. He's been one of the big risers, right? So this year we're going to be looking at Devon Achane as last year's Christian McCaffrey in this bold prediction, right? Like it's very similar. Calf injury, looks good. He's ready for week 1. I'm not so fast, right? Calf injury. This is a big deal, Theo. So I'm going to predict that not only is Devon Achane this year's Christian McCaffrey in a bad way, Ollie Gordon is this year's Jordan Mason and finishes after September. When we look back at the first month of the season, he will be the RB5, mostly by touchdowns. Miami's not going to be a great team, but they're going to score points, right? They still have Tyreek Hill. They still have Jalen Waddle, Darren Waller. Let's see what he has left. Tua is good in, mostly good in September. Start off. Mike McDaniels knows that he is on the hot seat. When they get in close, it's going to be Ollie Gordon is going to give you that fantasy production that LeGarrette Blount gave us about 10 years ago. The yards will be modest, but we're going to have a lot of touchdowns. I'm predicting maybe more than 1 per game. And on top of that, is Miami's defense, what's the state of that right now? They're probably going to have to score. Right. They're going to have to score some points here.
Not so good.
Bold prediction, Ollie Gordon, RB5 at the end of September.
See, I love this one. And I've made the parallels between Ollie Gordon and Jordan Mason in a redraft lens where you've seen Ollie Gordon's ADP in some of these very high stakes FFPC, NFFC leagues steam up to round 10. In some competitive home leagues, you're seeing Ollie Gordon sort of living in round 12. The train has left the station. People realize Ollie Gordon is a high-end handcuff with a bunch of outs. And I would say that if
where would Ollie Gordon go in our Superflex rookie drafts if we were doing one today?
Early second.
Like ahead
I
of
think he would go ahead of Scadaboo. I think he'd go ahead of Scadaboo. And the people in the chat can come out and hate and drop a lot of hate on this one. But the other thing that Ollie Gordon has in Dynasty, from a Dynasty lens, is he has name brand equity, where it's sort of like Braelon Allen last year. Ollie Gordon at one point in 2023 had over 2,000 yards from scrimmage at Oklahoma State. 2024, tough season. Oklahoma State was very bad after being really good in 2023. They Big 12 championship game. They made it all the way to the Big 12 championship game in 2023. Then last year fell apart, won like 3 games. Gordon's production was not like disappeared, but it certainly like halved. And Gordon fell in what was a very deep draft class. Alan, you bring up the size for Gordon. He's also a pretty decent pass catcher for a player of his size. So obviously not a like for like with Achane, but I think if Achane misses time, Gordon's also going to catch a couple of passes. So
like that.
He can handle a big workload. He showed that in college. And we have a kind of a trend here. Maybe it's the Oklahoma State running backs fall to day 3 that were super successful in college and end up being fantasy impact players. Chuba Hubbard with Carolina last year, Ollie Gordon potentially with Miami. And I think even if you're taking this away as, I disagree with you guys, Devon Achane is going to hold up. And my bags are packed for Devon Achane. But I've tried my best the last couple of weeks to make trade after trade after trade for Ollie Gordon in Dynasty. I traded 2/3 for him in a single quarterback league the other day. I'm pushing the chips in. And I also in redraft, I've been taking him in the 10th round. So I'm all in. I think
Let me ask you this. Would you trade Jacory Croskey-Merritt for him?
I would need Ollie Gordon plus, because I think Jacory Croskey-Merritt has a cleaner path here and he's going higher in redraft. So I think I have that slight edge there. Like Jacory Croskey-Merritt, I've been one that's sort of been banging the tables for him. A lot of people said they added Jacory Croskey-Merritt from listening to Scott Barrett and I talking about him in like June.
That's a good one.
So like we got a lot of credit for that one. Jacory Croskey-Merritt, you'll get more trade value than Gordon right now, even in Dynasty, because he's
likely to have who's likely to have come out the gate stronger, right? Like I don't know if the path is good, and I don't want to get off the hot take stuff, but Merritt, he's got a 4-person backfield he's dealing with. He's got the coach already said Rodriguez is going to get some goal line stuff, right?
Yeah.
Austin Eckler, I mean, he's a fantasy capper for the other guys, right? He's going to be involved. And then you got to carve out, 650 yards at least for Jaden Daniels. So that leaves Merritt. And listen, the thing about Croskey-Merritt is he could take like a little screen pass and like take it 70 yards, right?
He's sort of your Tuten argument a little bit with Jacory Croskey-Merritt, but just Jacory Croskey-Merritt, I think that Washington showed you their hand by moving Brian Robinson. It's Jacory Croskey-Merritt's the player that gave them the wiggle room and the freedom to do that, because I think they view him as the one. But I think it's a little bit like Tuten, not quite 6 weeks with Croskey-Merritt. I think that week 1, week 2, week 3 could maybe be a huge split. Austin Eckler, north of 30. Eckler's sort of in a role. He cannot handle a high volume role anymore. Chris Rodriguez is a guy who hasn't done anything for 2 years, and you're talking about a 6th-round pick. So I think JCM does have a very strong year. I think that he's actually a player that's going to, another hot take, I'll sneak one in. This doesn't count for our total, but Jacory Croskey-Merritt is going to have a good enough second half of the year that he's going to make dynasty managers make a mistake next summer, Alan. It's going to be just like Phillip Lindsay, and not the same level of impact as James Robinson, but it'll be one of these guys who's a 7th-round pick, undrafted free agent type. He's going to have enough production in the second half of the year, like our low-end RB2 numbers, that people are going to say, you know what? They love him. He's going to survive the 2026 NFL draft and free agency. I'm not trading him. And then Washington's going to draft a stud running back or sign a stud free agent running back.
Who's the best undrafted running back ever? It's got to be Arian Foster, right? Remember that guy?
Arian Foster definitely has to be the best undrafted one. 7th round wise, Terrell Davis has to be it.
I didn't know TD was 7th round.
7th. Yeah, I'd have to. Yeah. And then for Washington Commanders / Redskins / football team, it's the Butler. It's Alfred Morris, who gave us the round 6, but he had the instant RB1 season as a rookie. So it's been done before. And Alan, you crush it. I love your content. The two of us had a weekly podcast years back. We were doing Sonic Truth over at Player Profiler. So we've really gotten to know each other over the years. What's your week look like in season at Rotowire? Like, where can people find your content?
Yeah, the Rotowire YouTube page. I think that you come over there, check out what we're doing over there. For me personally, like I said, I'll be on the YouTube channel a lot, doing a lot of satellite radio for those who have it in the car or on the app. It's SiriusXM channel 87. I'll be filling in, during the week from 12 to 2 when needed. And then, of course, we do our Sunday show. So YouTube, though, is the place to find me.
Yeah, highly recommend all of Alan's work. I've also had Jim Coventry of Rotowire on several times this summer. I'll give you another one, and I don't know if this is hot enough for you, but I think that there is a complete lack of enthusiasm on Titans rookie quarterback Cam Ward. And Cam Ward has been a player that, Alan, the NFL gave the Tennessee Titans 0 primetime games this year. Every other team, there's like 2 teams didn't get a primetime game, and one of them was the number 1 overall pick quarterback. He had so much disrespect during the NFL draft, where the story of the NFL draft shifted to Shadur Sanders, and they spent like no time on the impact for Cam Ward, resurrecting this franchise. I think Cam Ward is going to defy expectations. I looked at the keep trade cut price, which I'm actually a little bit surprised that he's this high up on KTC, because I'm not necessarily seeing this in dynasty startup values, where I think a lot of times people are taking the Trevor Lawrences, the Kyler Murrays, the JJ McCarthys, all ahead of the number 1 overall pick. I think there's a lot of steam for Michael Penix, a lot of steam for Bryce Young this summer. I think Cam Ward is going to be surprisingly good. It reminds me a little bit of CJ Stroud's situation years ago in Houston. I don't think that they're going to come out and make the playoffs and be a winning team. I think that Tennessee will be improved this season, but I think Cam Ward is going to look very, very good. I think he's also an elevator of talent around him. Yes. And you're going to see this early on. Cam Ward has an absolute cannon. He's very athletic, not a scrambler, but a player who can evade pressure and extend plays. And I think Cam Ward is going to make Calvin Ridley into this year's Terry McLaurin, Cortland Sutton. That's not necessarily a dynasty take unless you're looking for, you're a one-year mercenary type for your dynasty roster. I think Ridley's a fine buy low. But the main takeaway is you're going to see that Calvin Ridley is going to play his best football in years because of the talent of Cam Ward. And I'll take it a step further. I think Cam Ward is going to help out not only his running backs, Tony Pollard to start the year, and Tyjae Spears when he comes back after about 5-6 weeks gone. I think Spears and Pollard will form a competent backfield. But I think Chig Okonkwo gets a dynasty rebound this year. Elick Iomanner gets a dynasty boost as a guy that we say, hey, he's pretty good.
Good pronunciation on that one. Elick Iomanner, that's how you say it?
Yeah, from
I was saying like Elemenor. I was saying
Medicine
something
Hat,
totally.
Canada. He's from Medicine Hat, Canada. Shout out to all the Canadian viewers and listeners, and many of them for Dynasty Life. But for me, it's Cam Ward. The vibes are there, Alan. This is a guy where I described his work ethic. I wrote an article in The Athletic recently, and I described Cam Ward's work ethic as Kobe Bryant-like. It's a guy where he's the first in the building, the last out of the building. He's a football maniac. And did you see a single picture of him doing anything this summer? No. Like, he doesn't exist besides in the football realm, because the guy's just in the building. This is how you rise up and you go from just the ascension from going from Incarnate Word to Washington State to Miami to the number 1 overall pick. He's an astronaut. And I don't think it stops. I think this year, when we get to Dynasty Startup season, Cam Ward is a locked-in QB1 top 12 Dynasty quarterback.
That is bold because, like you said, the consensus rankings don't actually reflect in this case where Cam Ward is being valued. Cam Ward gets drafted as like the QB 17-ish in real startups, like when you're actually in them for real money. And if you're predicting that he's going to be like a second round, third round pick in Superflex leagues next year as a top 12 quarterback, I would say that's hot, especially with the lack of weaponry around him. So that's a good call right there.
Okay, so I kept it hot on that one. You didn't denigrate my take. So
you didn't burn. You didn't burn anything, but you made it hot.
I made it hot enough. Okay, so why don't you stoke the fires a little more? You dropped 2 hot ones. You did 2 running backs in a row. Are you going to keep it at the running back position?
No, we're going to go negative right here. We're going negative. Yeah.
Don't do it, Alan. Don't do it, Alan.
So let me tell you. So I'm going to come out with the bold prediction here of Rashee Rice will not be valued as a top 24 dynasty wide receiver at this time next year. And let me explain. Sometimes when it goes wrong, it just stays wrong, right? Like, he came out hot in those couple games and it was like, oh, okay, he is a second round real NFL draft pick that Pat Mahomes is his preferred target, right? And I'm not saying Rashee Rice is going to be a bust and have a bad career, but has the off the field thing, now has the 6-game suspension, has an injury last year that it's being underrated that it's slow to come back. We know that when we see these big injuries, usually the next year is not great. There's like a little bit, it's the following year where they're back to 100%. Rashee Rice didn't like hit me as like an athlete that could just like recover like in the Adrian Peterson fashion. He's a good player, Rashee Rice, right? And he's playing with the best quarterback, one of the top 2 of all time. But because of the slow roll, because of the lack of practice time game time that he's going to have in these 6 weeks, I think that he's going to be very disappointing for anyone that's holding on to him. My prediction is that these wide receivers will be worth more. That doesn't mean that Rice won't be good in 2 years from now, but this time next year, wide receivers with more dynasty value than Rice will be Ricky Pearsall, George Pickens, Xavier Worthy, and at least one of the rookies, Golden, Ibuka, or Hunter.
Yeah, and I think that the big takeaway from this is if you're negative towards Rashee Rice, there's probably an inverse where you have to be bullish on Xavier Worthy. And Xavier Worthy, like, has a 6. So I hope you're wrong on this one because I have exposure to Rashee Rice, and we took him in the 6th round of an FFPC main event on a wide receiver heavy build. So I hope you're very wrong on this one, Alan. But I'll say that if you are right on this one, it means Xavier Worthy to the moon, because Xavier Worthy last year, the whole argument was Rashee Rice isn't here, and Xavier Worthy, this production will not sustain because Rashee Rice is the alpha in the offense. There's a bunch of people who say that. There's some smart people out there that disagree with that, but there's a lot of smart people on that take. And Xavier Worthy, I'm sort of in the latter. I'm team Xavier Worthy. I think he's an edge pick this year. But my goal, my dream for Kansas City is 6 weeks of Xavier Worthy to establish his role, and then Rice is worked in, and it's like a symbiotic relationship. You think it's actually going to be Rice failing to deliver at that high level, a little bit more of a PPR merchant type vibe from you. A lot of wide receiver competition out there for, I will say, like, just from a general take where you missed those 6 weeks. I talked about Matthew Golden. I talked about Teteroa McMillan. I talked about Travis Hunter. there's a bunch of these. Roma Dunze has an opportunity. You mentioned Ricky Pearsall. There's a lot of breakout candidates at the wide receiver position this year. So I will say the competition is fierce.
Right. And then you're going to have wide receivers that come in as rookies that we just put in the top 24 because we like them as top 10 picks in the real NFL draft. Like, again, this doesn't mean that Rice won't produce ever again as a top 15, top 12 wide receiver. I'm just saying that there's a 1 in 4 chance, a bold prediction, that at this time next year, that we're not viewing Rice as, you're not getting the top 24 value. You're getting like wide receiver 30 because maybe, he misses 6 games. They have the bye in week 10. There's 1 week right there. Maybe he needs like a game or two to tune up. And by the time, unless he finishes as like the last 5 weeks, like where he started last season, you're in trouble if you're holding him just on a trade market value.
Yeah. And you mentioned a player in this bold prediction, and with Rice, and I'm going to kind of segue. It was a nice professional segue by you. This is everything sort of shaping up for George Pickens to be this year's T. Higgins.
Ooh, I like that.
We now have the Micah Parsons trade where every Dallas game looks like it could be a shootout. And Alan, CeeDee Lamb is this alpha wide receiver 1, sort of like Jamar Chase, but George Pickens has this pathway to being the number 2 option on the entire offense, where they have to scheme things for him. Very pass-heavy team. Dak Prescott might lead the NFL in pass attempts, but I think George Pickens is going to be somewhere in that top 15 scoring wide receiver. If you want to go bold and spicy, call him the wide receiver 12. If you want to be a pragmatic, I'll call him the wide receiver 15, and I'll kind of stick with that. I think it's a safe bet. It's splitting hairs, though, in terms of like 1 or 2 points a game. He's going to be really good for fantasy this year based on where you had to draft him in dynasty startups, where you had to draft him in redraft. But George Pickens is going to have such a good year that he is going to turn into a $100 million man on the free agent market, where he's going to be not one of these $75, $76 million deals, not like a Nico Collins or a Jalen Waddle. You're going to see north of that. You're going to see George Pickens, because of his age and because of his profile as an alpha, you're going to see him being in an absolute bidding war. There's going to be a number of teams that are going to look at George Pickens as the difference maker that they can add at the free agent spot, or Dallas Cowboys are just going to pay him the bag and figure out a way to make it fit. They now have the flexibility to do that because of the Parsons trade. They're not going to be paying Parsons. So for me, George Pickens is a player that is already steamed up in Dynasty, but maybe not steamed up as enough. He's going to be a top 15 scorer in redraft, and he will be a top 15 Dynasty wide receiver heading into next offseason, and there will be a ton of steam for him as someone's wide receiver 1 or the Dallas Cowboys established high-profile wide receiver 2.
Yeah, I like the term that you used earlier when you say about Xavier Worthy. You said an edge pick. Pickens is shaping up to be that. He didn't cost much in drafts this year, like a 4th or 5th or 6th round pick, depending on when you drafted. So that's a great call. I love the comparison that you made with the Cincinnati Bengals. And the one thing, again, the obstacle to him getting $100 million is Jerry a little tight with the wallet, pushes the whole thing. So but your point is made, though. He's going to have offers out there.
Alan, what is your next hot take for the 2025 fantasy football season?
It doesn't make any sense to me that Josh Allen is an MVP quarterback and there's no established alpha receiver. That role is wide open, right? So it has to be someone. Keon Coleman, who you and I both thought he was a very interesting player. He's basically a first-round receiver. He was drafted the 1st or 2nd pick in the real NFL draft.
Ahead of Ladd McConkey.
There it is. He is set up to be a top 12, a wide receiver 1 in Dynasty at this time next year, or Kincaid has to be a top 6 tight end, right? One of those two. I'll land on Coleman. Keon Coleman was breaking out before he got injured. He had like a 125-yard game. He had another big yardage game with a touchdown. It doesn't make any sense that Josh Allen, like I said, is an MVP quarterback, but there's no MVP receivers. It has to happen this year. Josh Allen wants to take it to the next level and win a Super Bowl. He can't do it all himself. He'll still be fine. Josh Allen's still going to be a top 2 QB, top 3 QB. But in order to go to the next level, it's very clear and obvious. Somebody needs to step up. I'm going to put my chip on Keon Coleman. He profiles as well. He's going to be a wide receiver 1.
I had this conversation in a couple of high-stakes drafts, where one with Dan Williamson, one with Nelson Sousa, where we took Keon Coleman. And I've made this argument for Keon Coleman. You don't feel safe at all when you click the button on Keon Coleman, but there's some really positive vibes there in Buffalo. I think his pathway is he's going to be a touchdown scoring weapon of mass destruction, where he'd have something like 11 touchdown catch season. I think that's
Devontae Adams from his prime.
Evoking the name Devontae Adams, this is just very, very bold. But I'll say Keon Coleman was very young last year. There's a reason that NFL teams drafted him so highly. Just pop in the tape of the LSU Florida State game that started about 2 years ago to this day was the Keon Coleman 3 touchdown catch game. About 2 years ago to this day that we're recording, it was one of those neutral site games, huge win for Florida State. And Allen, he's dropped 2 in-state Florida type predictions here. He is in Jacksonville, so he's got like well-embedded moles in a lot of rooms. He's got his ear to the pavement down there in the Sunshine State.
Theo, it's just like I said, it's an uncomfortable click, which means it's a good click in redraft, right? Because it's not about what's likely to happen. It's about what could happen. And you're not, again, I made the exaggerated thing in the beginning of this podcast, Tyler Shough being a number 1 quarterback. That's like almost 0, right? I mean, Keon Coleman with no established person there, this has a path to happen. Facts don't mean anything, someone once told me, unless you could craft a narrative around it, right? So this is the narrative. Here we go. Keon Coleman, let's go. What's your next bold prediction?
Yeah, I love that. And I'm gonna craft a narrative. I'm gonna paint you a picture. And my picture is going to involve Harold Fannin Jr. being a tight end 1 over the second half of the fantasy football season. Let's say post NFL trade deadline, he is a locked in top 12 redraft tight end, and he is going to be treated as a top 10 tight end in Dynasty heading into the 2026 season. Harold Fannin Jr. is one of the youngest tight ends in football this year. He's 21 years old, 3rd round pick, record-breaking production at Bowling Green. And again, we want to pop in tapes. What can I see, Theo? I don't watch college football. You're telling me to watch Keon Coleman against LSU. I'm going to say pop in Penn State, pop in Texas A&M games. That's all you need to know about Harold Fannin Jr. He also had over 200 receiving yards in his bowl game, his last bowl game. Harold Fannin Jr., the tape doesn't lie, the most productive college tight end of all time, ran an okay 40, and people sort of like, they were like, whatever. Again, but he goes in the 3rd round. Day 2 draft capital, lands on Cleveland. People say, what's going on with this? Cleveland Browns, they have David Njoku. Well, all of the beat reporters say Cleveland is going to be, and they were a team that was not in 12 personnel last year, but the beat reporters say they're going to be one of the most 12 heavy teams in the NFL this year, because Fannin Jr. is going to be a big part of the offense, not just a tight end who gets targets, occasionally. Big part of the offense. Wide receiver Jerry Jeudy locked in. Cedric Tillman, there's some enthusiasm for him, but the sample size very small. If there's an injury to Jeudy, there's an injury to Tillman, Fannin basically becomes the wide receiver 2, potentially the wide receiver 1 in the offense. David Njoku is what he is. David Njoku has been awesome for fantasy, but the way the Cleveland Browns are shaping up, David Njoku will be traded at the trade deadline, maybe one of those trades that's before the trade deadline, because of how good Harold Fannin Jr. is. Harold Fannin Jr. Is going to have an awesome season. I think he finishes somewhere in the top 18 scorers at the tight end position. But if you look at it over the back half of the year, it's going to be a little bit like we saw with Chigakonkwo, Pat Freiermuth, where it's the backloaded production that actually helps fantasy managers, Allen, because you know when to start them. And referencing those guys' rookie seasons, Harold Fannin Jr. is a player you want to get on your dynasty roster if you have a chance to make a last-minute trade before the season.
This I like here. And the reason is that there's a way to get him. So say you're one of these teams in a dynasty league and you're at the point of the season where your team is probably not going to make the playoffs and you have some good veterans, right? We're always trying to sell Mike Evans off our roster for picks, right? Sometimes you don't need to, in my opinion, sell for picks, sell for players. So if there's a slower ramp up for someone like Harold Fannin Jr. and you have a Travis Kelce on your roster, man, and Travis Kelce's producing in the first 6 weeks of the season because Rashee Rice isn't there, that's a perfect dynasty trade. You give up Travis Kelce and you probably get back a Harold Fannin type along with whatever you think the compensation should be. So if you have veterans and you don't have, and you're not a great team and you don't have Harold Fannin on your dynasty roster, this is a shortcut to rebuild it. That's a very good call.
Yeah, and I think that there's been a lot of confusion as to how to rank the tight ends in this class after we get by Loveland and Warren. Loveland and Warren are a whole nother level, but when it comes to Terrence Ferguson, Mason Taylor, Elijah Arroyo, there's going to be a lot of dynasty managers who want to rank these guys ahead. And in our updated dynasty rankings over at Fantasy Points, I have Fannin ahead of all those guys. And when I started the summer, Elijah Arroyo, anyone who consumed my content knows that I'm a huge Arroyo guy, and I still am. I think Arroyo's got a nice future for us in fantasy football. But the vibes with Fannin Jr., I'm all the way in here, Alan. I think this is a player that is just on a ascension type track. Yeah, I'm all in here. All right, Alan, you are officially back up.
All right. So this is one I truly believe in, right? Like, I know we talked about hot take, a bold prediction being about a 25% chance to happen, a pathway too. And Trevor Lawrence will be valued as a top 6 quarterback at this time next year. Just think about this, right? Like, we made the comparison. Anyone who listens to any dynasty or fantasy content knows the Tampa Bay from last year ports over to the Jacksonville Jaguars this year, right? Doesn't mean it will happen, but there is a path for that. Think about how we thought about Baker Mayfield this time last year. Nobody wanted him. Everyone thought he was just kind of like a little bust, but it's basically the same thing for Trevor Lawrence. Now, if Trevor Lawrence, if Liam Cohen is a right answer, as they say, and is able to have, everyone loves Brian Thomas Jr., right? Everybody thinks, they paid a ransom for Travis Hunter, and now they have running backs that everybody's like. So if Trevor Lawrence is able to make this work, and you think he's in the same sort of tier or bucket that we thought about Baker last year, Baker finished as the QB5 last year, Theo. If Baker Mayfield, Theo, was the same age as Trevor Lawrence, 25, 26 years old, we'd be valuing him as QB6 in Dynasty, ahead of Mahomes probably, no lower than Mahomes, like QB7, right? But because Baker's 30 plus years old, he gets valued out of the top 15. So Trevor Lawrence, 25, 26 years old at this time next year, if this works, and I believe it will be valued as a top 5 quarterback in dynasty fantasy football.
Yeah, this is probably the spiciest one we've had, because you not only said he's going to gain all this value, like I would have probably qualified it, been a lot less bold as you are, but to get into the top 5 in dynasty quarterback top 5, top 6 is just so locked in, with Mahomes as the QB6. You've got Burrow, you've got Hurts, you've got Allen, you've got Jackson, you've got Jaden Daniels. It's going to take a special year out of Trevor Lawrence. But what I think is interesting is you referenced the Baker Mayfield. Last year, Baker Mayfield had 41 touchdown passes, and he also set a career high in rushing yardage in the same season. Maybe Liam Cohen truly is the smartest man in the room. Maybe Liam Cohen is going to be more successful as a head coach than Ben Johnson. It seems like Cohen's on this incredible ascension where he's just this offensive genius. Can't
Trevor Lawrence run, right? He's a mobile quarterback. Yes. That was what we heard about when he came out. Not that he's a running quarterback, but he's a quarterback who can run. Kind of like Aaron Rodgers in his prime a little bit, in that vein. And he's already been QB7. This isn't oh, I hope this happens. Trevor Lawrence had a QB7 finish. I agree with you that the big 3, if you include Hurts, big 4, if you include Daniels and Hurts, and then Joe Burrow is up there as well. But right there is where Trevor Lawrence is going to be. And it's just because it's an age thing. In Dynasty, age is important to our rankings. And, at 25, 26, if he does have 350 yards rushing, and Liam Cohen, maybe he was the reason that Baker was rushing more. He probably said, tuck it and go. What are you doing here? So
Baker was vibing on the sideline last year, breaking out his Zin. He keeps a Zin on him mid-game. Baker's vibing. But I'll say that Trevor Lawrence, there is a segment of dynasty managers who do not like Trevor Lawrence right now. They feel burned. They feel like this is a guy where we were told. Yeah, and they were told this story, and now it's just been, you mentioned the QB7 year. That was year 2 where Lawrence took that huge step forward. Ever since then, it's been disappointment. Now it's year 5. And Alan, Jacksonville has no choice but to be into Trevor Lawrence. So you have a 2-year window with him under Cohen, no matter what. So he's got 2 years to sort of get this thing headed this way after it was like this or like this.
There's been no worse coaching setup for him than, Urban Meyer, and then Doug Peterson lost his fastball, right? I mean, like everyone thought that was the right answer. And again, some of this is on Trevor Lawrence, right? And for good reason, people hate him, like as far as his fantasy value. But I'm telling you, there is a path here for him to get right back in that mix. And like you said, it's now or never.
Okay, so I'm going to drop. We love these narrative ones. I think you like being told a story, Alan. So I'll tell you a good story, and it's a story called Braelon Allen is going to lead the New York Jets in rushing yardage this year. Braelon Allen's been a player that I've sort of been pounding the table for. He settled in as like a round 9, round 10 type value in redraft. There's a little bit of steam for him. I think his final stat line will be 950 rushing yards and 8 rushing touchdowns. And he's 21 years old. So this is a huge breakthrough for him as a dynasty asset and a huge win for people drafting him in redraft. And people say, well, hold on a second, Theo. What are you doing here? What about Breece Hall? Breece Hall will be traded to the Dallas Cowboys.
Ooh.
This is what we like to call in Vegas, this little insider tip for all you Vegas AC people out there. It's what we call a blackjack split, Alan. You roster both, and instead of having one starting running back for your dynasty team, your redraft team, you get 2 out of them. Because Breece Hall, who doesn't seem to be like, there's a lot of like double talk from this Jets coaching staff. You get these unbelievably wonderful praise for Breece Hall, saying we're going to use him all over the field. We're going to target him in the passing game. He's a huge part of our offense. Then you'll have Aaron Glenn coming out and saying, I love every running back on my roster. Then you have the Jets beat reporters saying Braelon Allen, the most impressive running back this preseason for the Jets. So there's a lot of like double talk there. They also haven't extended Breece Hall. The Dallas Cowboys, we talked about George Pickens. Dallas Cowboys, for better or for worse, they just went, probably for worse, just traded Micah Parsons. They now have all this capital. What is Jerry Jones like? Jerry Jones likes selling jerseys. Jerry Jones likes setting things up for Dak Prescott, goes and gets him George Pickens, goes and re-signs Jake Ferguson. What are the Dallas Cowboys missing? They are missing a running back. A lot of people keep pointing to Jacksonville as the team that Dallas is going to trade with. What if Dallas levels up a little bit in terms of name brand equity and gets a big name like Breece Hall coming into Dallas? You end up getting Breece Hall being put into a backfield where he would dominate touches, and you get Braelon Allen, this 21-year-old absolute unit of a player, 6 foot tall, 240 pounds. Actually, he's like 6'1", 240, and he has 8% body fat. This just weapon of mass destruction type bowling ball that Aaron Glenn is going to establish his running game, establish a defensive culture, and with Justin Fields behind center, running RPOs with Braelon Allen, with the threat of Justin Fields as a runner and the threat of Braelon Allen as a runner, that's going to put pressure on defenses. They don't want to pay Breece Hall. They get to use Braelon Allen on his cheap rookie deal. Braelon Allen to the moon, Breece Hall to the moon once he's traded. Blackjack split.
Yeah, no, I mean that's good for everybody. Everybody would be. It's so hard to like envision it because so often fantasy trades like adversely affect fantasy football. This one is a win for all, man. That would be good. I never even thought of Breece getting traded to Dallas. I think in the during the real NFL draft, there was some rumors he could be traded to Washington at that time. So yeah, no, this is great, man. That's a good one to wrap up your bold predictions, man. You got any extras? I mean, want to give the people a bonus?
Yeah, I got a couple of hot, like very quick rapid fire ones.
Right,
Also,
I'll rapid fire.
Okay, Keaton Mitchell is going. Derrick Henry is going to break the points per game. Actually, won't break it. He'll come close to it. He's going to have a Curtis Martin-like 31-year-old year, but load management becomes a little bit of a thing. Ravens are Super Bowl bound. Ravens are going to win so many games this year. They are headed towards like a 14-win season. They're going to be very careful with Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is going to sit 4 or 5 games this year, Alan. I don't think it's going to be a catastrophic injury, but I think they're going to say, you know what, Derrick Henry, let's be careful.
Can I add something to this? Let me add something to this. Yeah, because it's what you just said. It's important. I think this is I love where you're going here. We interviewed the Derrick Henry's high school coach on our podcast, and he said when you try to bench Derrick Henry, he literally threatens your life. Like he will not allow you to take him out of a football game. But maybe in his older age, he's calmed down a little bit.
Yeah, well, you know what else Derrick Henry doesn't have, though? He doesn't have a Super Bowl ring. Doesn't have a Super Bowl ring. And you know who else doesn't have a Super Bowl ring? Lamar Jackson. So this is a franchise where
I like that.
Baltimore, there's going to be a lot of very, very driven people in that building to just get the job done this year. There's a lot of haters out there. Every time I make my Baltimore Super Bowl prediction, people say Baltimore's not winning. Lamar Jackson's not going to win. Lamar Jackson is getting the Super Bowl this year. You can write it down in ink. Derrick Henry gets his first Super Bowl ring. But this whole being careful with the big dog, it's going to lead to Keaton Mitchell being one of the assets you want in redraft and in Dynasty as a bench running back. Keaton Mitchell is going to get 4 starts where he averages 18 points per game, Alan. He is explosive. He looks fantastic in the preseason. And I think Keaton Mitchell is going to be a good enough player that he is going to command some weekly touches in this offense because gives them this explosive nature. And we can look back at last year where even when Derrick Henry was hitting, you'd still see Justice Hill getting touches. Justice Hill ended up catching a bunch of passes last year. Mitchell can catch passes out of the backfield, but Mitchell can also rip off 40-yard touchdown runs. Very explosive player, had over 8 yards per carry in 2023. Keaton Mitchell will get 4 starts and in those 4 starts, he averages 18 points per game. Keaton Mitchell, get him on your bench right now in redraft, get him on your bench in Dynasty.
Who would you rather have on your roster in Dynasty, Ollie Gordon or Keaton Mitchell?
Ollie Gordon, because Ollie Gordon could do it for a season. And I'm realistic. I love Keaton Mitchell. I just said he's going to give you, but if you gave Keaton Mitchell 15 starts, I don't think he could hold up. I think he's more of a really fun number 2 running back with explosion, not a high volume guy. Ollie Gordon could average over 20 touches a game. Mitchell's going to do it in different ways, but hey, it helps when Lamar Jackson is your quarterback and you can rip off those long runs.
Yeah, I'm just curious, like how you get Keaton Mitchell on your roster because everyone knows that he's like an explosive player, right? Like you can't just offer like a 3rd round pick, right? Like I guess not at this time of year.
I think people are taking it because I think people value thirds a lot more than maybe we do necessarily. Dynasty's a funny animal. Redraft, I think Keaton Mitchell, just take him in the 14th round. It's a great pick in the 14th round. But I think in Dynasty, if it's a Derrick Henry manager rostering Keaton Mitchell, they're going to value him a lot more than the non-Derrick Henry manager. Do you have another bonus hot take?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just get right to the point. This is the Pat Mahomes revenge season, and he finishes as the QB1 overall in fantasy football in 2025. I mean, we've already seen him have the 50 touchdown season, right? It was close to that. Did he get 50 that one year?
Yeah, he's one of the only quarterbacks in history to have 50 touchdowns. He is the last quarterback to cross that line.
Right. And it seems like that Travis Kelce is in a little bit better headspace, like better shape. He doesn't look as doughy. This is his last year. This is the Tony Gonzalez declared last year. We know this is in contradiction to my other bold prediction, but if Rashee Rice comes back, that only adds to it. Hollywood Brown, a little banged up, but when he does play, he's a meaningful player. And they picked up, it's kind of sneaky, Tyquan Thornton, a former 2nd-round pick, speedster who looked good in the preseason. This could be the Mahomes 50 touchdown season with close to 5,000 yards and finishes as the overall QB1 just when we've all written him off.
Absolutely love that one. We talked about Xavier Worthy earlier. Tyquan Thornton stylistically, the running backs, there's depth there this year. Pacheco's back, and it's just a self-scouting in the building. All those games they won by 2 or 3 points last year where it wasn't exciting. Mahomes gets his sort of the Mahomes mojo back. I think that would just be fantastic for fantasy football. There are people just starting to doubt the king. You've seen this in sports, Alan. It's not just in Rodgers. It's not just this is not just a football thing. It's like the all-time greats have that extra gear where when you start to doubt them, they take off. And I'll say that Tom Brady had a couple of those last years in New England where we're starting to doubt it. Then he has that unbelievable year in Tampa Bay, his first year there where he throws for all the touchdowns.
Green Bay was ready to trade Aaron Rodgers, and then he had 2 MVP seasons in a row.
There you go. Absolutely. That's a fantastic parallel right there. Give you one more bonus. This is not that spicy, but like Travion Henderson mania has made people sort of and I'm certainly I'm guilty. I'm fully in on the mania. But it's made us sort of forget about Omarion Hampton a little bit. Ooh. And this is not a bold take at all. Omarion Hampton's being drafted this way, but I think he's sort of a guy who's hitting his ADP for most of the regular season. He's going to be a low-end RB1 for the regular season, giving you RB 11, 12, 13 type numbers. You're going to say this is pretty good. But when we get to the actual money weeks, it's going to be the Omarion Hampton show. Omarion Hampton will be the fantasy playoff hero. From weeks 15 to 17, Omarion Hampton will score 6 touchdowns, including a 3-touchdown score game in week 16 in a shootout win over the Dallas Cowboys. And all 3 of these running backs next year, Hampton, Henderson, Ashton Genty, will be top 18 selections in 2026 early redraft. They're all going to hit, but Omarion Hampton will be the one in the fantasy playoffs that is helping fantasy managers win titles, and there'll be a ton of steam for him heading into early 2026 redraft.
Dude, you said this wasn't spicy, and then you burnt my mouth. Like, this is spicy, because if that happens, and you name the very specific week, which I always like in these bold predictions, get very specific. I think it's fun, because if it hits, it's even more gratifying, right? If you say, hey,
3 touchdowns, it's week 16, Dallas Cowboys, Omarion Hampton.
Right. And what you do is, if that happens, he's going to be the RB1 in our dynasty rankings. Like, it's just going to happen because that's what people remember.
Yeah, I think it's sort of, you can make some parallels between him and rookie season Jonathan Taylor if you want to get kind of specific there. The only thing is we're in this age of really young, really talented running backs. There's resistance points, Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, and then I mentioned the other 2 guys, Henderson. If Henderson comes in and catches 80 passes and rushes for 900 yards and looks like, then the Ashton Genty might lead all running backs in touches. We are in a wonderful time period for dynasty running backs. And your guy, Devon Achane, if he doesn't get hurt, going full circle with your Ollie Gordon prediction, might catch 100 balls. So there's a lot of competition in the streets, but Omarion Hampton will certainly have his say. Alan, this was awesome. We crushed it. Really appreciate the time that the 2 of us have podcasted together this offseason. We've done a number of podcasts, my channel, your channel, even on Sirius Satellite Radio. Let everybody once again know where they can find your work during the season.
Well, Theo, I love you, man, and I truly do mean that. You're fun to be around, and as a podcaster itself, we've been doing, like you said, shows for a couple of years. You have become very refined and polished and entertaining, and I listen and watch your show. It's a regular appointment viewing for me, and just like everyone that's watching right now already knows how great you are at this stuff.
Appreciate
so I
that.
just want to say I've noticed it. So if you want to follow along with what I'm doing, find me on social media at Alan Seslowsky. You gotta find me on the YouTube channel for most part.
Yeah, highly recommend all of Alan's work. Make sure you go and check out our updated Dynasty rankings over at Fantasy Points. I'm writing a Dynasty weekly article where you can also find that. Consider subscribing to Fantasy Points. Use the code Theo2025. Level your fantasy game up this season with Fantasy Points.
What do you get with that code?
You get a little something off. You got to go in and check it out. Yeah, at least 10%. At least 10%.
Cash equals cash, baby. 10% is 10%.
Theo 2025 always gets you something. I say at least 10% because once in a while it might fluctuate. But
so
right before the season, 10%.
That code is hard to remember. 2025. Why don't they just do Theo 25?
Because it's 2025 right now, Alan. Theo 2025.
But what if someone's watching this video in 26? You just do code Theo.
So if they're coming back in 2026 to check up on how our hot takes hit, they're like let me burn Alan and Theo if they missed on one of them. But we're not going to miss on any of them. If you did come back to review this video, I hope you realize how smart we are. And make sure you stick with us here at Fantasy Points. Check out Fantasy Points YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to School of Scott podcast. I'm dropping that with Scott Barrett every single week. Fantasy Football Daily 4 times a week. Waiver Wire starts it, all that good stuff. But Dynasty Life every single week, Fantasy Points, YouTube, and on its dedicated podcast feed. Let's crush it this season.